Okay.
All right, I'll keep an eye on any newcomers, but welcome everyone to, gosh, I think this must be the 14th or 15th Illinois Solar Tour. I was running it back in 2007. My name is Lisa Albrecht. I'm on the board of directors for Illinois Solar, which is the nonprofit here in Illinois since 1975. So a lot of people think that solar is new to a new industry, but it is just a newly flourishing industry. We've been around for a while now, just promoting the technology and helping homeowners navigate their way to decide whether or not it's a good fit for their home. This year we actually have both a 501c3, which we use to do primarily advocacy work, where we're working to promote solar within the legislature, as well as now a 501c6 that allows us to do, well, actually flip that, to do primarily education throughout the state. This is hosted today by the Illinois Solar Education Association, which is brand new organization this year. So Jay Futterman is going to be our presenter today. Jay has been a solar ambassador, gosh, Jay, 8 years?
2016. 2016.
Wow.
4 years, yeah.
4 years. Okay, yeah. Yeah. So welcome everyone. I'm going to go ahead and let Jay take over from here. And we've got 2 more in the waiting room. Let me bring them on. Well, hello, Chuck Carrington. And we've got Stan also just joined us. I was just welcoming everyone here. Just so Chuck is actually a solar owner, but Stan, for your information. So thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Lisa Albrecht. I'll be answering questions on the back end so that Jay, our solar ambassador, is able to just focus on the presentation and teach you guys everything that he's learned firsthand as a solar owner. So Jay, I'll let you take it from here.
All right, thank you, Lisa. Thanks everyone for joining. So as we mentioned, I've been a volunteer with Illinois Solar Education Association for 4 years now. I've had solar on my house since 2016, but I've been interested in it for a lot longer. And I think this is the probably 3rd or 4th year I've been involved with the solar home tour. In years past, we've just kind of hung around the backyard, had people stop by. We craned our necks from across the street to look at the solar panels and just talked about stuff. But this year, like everything else, it's being done on Zoom. So thank y'all for joining. I don't work in the solar industry at all. I'm just kind of a regular person who happens to care about where my energy comes from. And I've been so enamored with solar. I've been really kind of spreading the word to people since I had it installed. So people kind of come to solar from a lot of different perspectives. My personal story is I got into it because of environmental reasons, and you can see this lovely September sky in San Francisco. It's just not normal. You know, climate change, which had been my concern, which got me into solar initially, it's now becoming more and more in our face, the changes that are happening, and they're getting worse and worse. And you know, the effects are very clear, becoming more clear by the year, and the cause of it is also very clear. This is a coal-fired power plant 20 miles from my house. It's cause and effect. We know burning fossil fuels leads to climate change. Solar energy is a key way to counter this, but even if you don't care about the environment or aren't really that concerned about it, solar could still be a great option for you because of this. This is a copy of my most recent bill from ComEd, where I don't owe anything. And the fact is that the cheapest way you can get your energy in Illinois for most people is solar. Whether you get that on your roof or you participate in a community solar program if you don't have a suitable roof, the cheapest energy you can get in Illinois is solar. So, you know, for me, solar is all about solutions. We know that the cost of doing nothing really is astronomical. Investing in clean energy solutions saves money, and it's a huge generator of economic activity. We all have a role to play in this transition, and really, if you're not part of the solution, then honestly, you're part of the problem. So just to go through real quick how residential solar systems work. We have the sun in the sky. The sun shines on your photovoltaic array, which sits on top of the roof. It just sits there. It has no moving parts, requires virtually no maintenance. That generates DC power, which then goes into an inverter, which converts it to AC power, which goes into the service panel in your basement. Electricity from there then flows to your household appliances or out to your car. There's no change in the way you experience the way power is delivered to your house. You get the same electricity you've always depended on, whether the sun is out or it's not. But if you're making excess power, that excess power goes through your electric meter and goes out onto the grid, and you get credited for that excess power that you're generating on your electric bill. If the sun's not shining, electricity comes in from the grid through your meter and into your house just like it always would. So it's really seamless. You don't really notice anything different with the way you use electricity. The only difference is cleaner air, healthier environment, and significantly lower energy costs. So my first system that I had was installed in 2016. I had looked into it a few years earlier. The price at that point was still a little high in 2013, but the costs of solar have dropped dramatically over the last 10 years. And there's great state and federal incentives in place that really make financial sense. So our initial system that we had installed was designed to cover all of our yearly electricity needs. This is just a picture of how it's installed. So we had a crew come up and on the roof they installed a racking system that gets installed directly into the roof rafters. These systems have been around for a long time. Really, I haven't had any issues with any flooding or roof penetration issues. This is all very well established technology that works. And then they hoisted the panels up there. They're lightweight. They're about 2.5 by 5 feet in size. They just kind of click down onto the racking system. The whole installation process took about 2 days. And this is what it looks like. It's on the east side of my roof. Southern exposure is probably best, but east or west works just fine. And it was a 16 panel array, 4.2 kilowatt system. Each panel was rated at 285 watts, and they were made by Solar World out of Hillsboro, Oregon. And like I said, it was sized to provide all of our electricity needs for the year. And that was working great until in 2017, I bought my first electric car. This is a Chevy Bolt, the all-electric version. I love electric cars, big fan of those, but I started buying electricity again from the utility, and I didn't like that. So I had another system installed on the west side of my house. This was in 2018. So in just the 2 years, the technology for solar panels had advanced to the point where you can get 360 watt rated panels. So that's great because you get a lot more energy in a smaller footprint, which was my situation on the west side of the roof because there was a tree that had some shading issues. But I had 9 of these panels installed, a 3.1 kilowatt system, and this was intended to cover all the electricity needs for my driving for the year. So at this point, we have 2 sort of independent solar systems that all work seamlessly and provides all the electricity that my household needs for my driving and for our household use. This is what it looks like from the outside. So, hard to see really from my house. You have to be standing in the street really to see it. So by not coming here and seeing it in person, honestly, folks, you're not missing too much. But that's what it's all about. I just want to put in a quick plug for Illinois Solar Energy Association. We are having a raffle. We're raffling off a Tesla Model X. So you can go to illinoissolar.org and find out information on how to get that, get your entry there. Information about Illinois Solar Energy and Education Association, great resources, educational resources, listings of solar installers that you can look up. Reminder to everybody to vote for pro-climate or legislators and leaders. That's crucially important. And I know I kind of went through that real quick, but you know, we do have a whole series of full sort of more in-depth educational webinars that we do about the nuts and bolts of going solar. But kind of the purpose of the home tour is to kind of have more of a conversational kind of interaction with people. So I want to kind of open it up to everybody. And, you know, maybe in the chat, if you could just enter where you live and maybe what prompted your interest in solar. We can kind of start a conversation and, you know, take it from there. Happy to answer any questions that y'all have about solar, living with solar, you know, my process or any other questions. So I'm gonna stop this share here so I can see everybody at least and see the chat.
I'm on mute and I'm telling people to remove themselves from mute. The irony.
Yeah, we don't have too many people on, so we can kind of all talk at once, I think.
Let's see. Oh, there's a new person in the waiting room.
So I had a question.
Yeah.
All right, great. I just let a couple more people in from the waiting room. Yeah, go ahead, Chuck.
Well, quick question. I've only had 2 bills since I've turned on my system. Mm-hmm. And of course I've been producing way more than I need, but I still have to pay, you know, like $15 to $16 in fees and stuff, which I thought that was the norm, but I noticed your bill says 0.
Yeah. So I trust you're in ComEd territory or Ameren?
Chuck, you froze there. He's in ComEd territory.
ComEd, yeah. So there's 2 different ways that you can get billed for electricity. One of them is kind of the basic rate, where a kilowatt hour has the same cost, whether it's being used at peak time or off peak time. And that's the way most people do their billing. I switched over to hourly rate, where the price of electricity varies throughout the day. So at night, when there's not a lot of demand, the price or value of a kilowatt hour of electricity goes quite low, which is great because when I charge my car, I charge it overnight. And during the day, when everyone has their, you know, appliances running and air conditioner running, the price of electricity can go quite high. So for people who don't have solar, you can kind of adjust how you use your electricity and sometimes come out ahead with hourly pricing. If you do have solar and if you have an electric car, hourly pricing can be fantastic because during the day, when the sun is shining, when the price or value of electricity is high, I'm feeding tons of that back onto the grid. And at night when I'm using electricity, it's a lot cheaper. So rather than being billed on a kilowatt hour, which you probably are, Chuck, I'm being billed on a sort of a dollar basis based on when I use my electricity. So in this type of billing, I'm not getting charged for the connection to the grid that you would be getting charged for. I used to be on the same billing thing as you, and you know, it's basically what you're paying is just so you stay connected to the grid. I'm not sure if it's a billing oversight or what. I thought I'd still have to pay, but it may be that since I'm overproducing, I'm getting dollar credits and that dollar is going to take care of that $15 a month I would have otherwise been spending. So that kind of is where that difference comes from, I think.
Okay.
Yeah,
I understand.
and if I can add just a tiny bit, ComEd doesn't necessarily let all ratepayers go onto the hourly billing method. I don't use enough energy in a single month to qualify for that program. So you can reach out to ComEd to see if they can switch you over from the fixed rate to hourly. But when you have that conversation, make sure that they also remember that you have net metering. So your net metering agreement is done manually. So they still are doing net metering bills manually. So you just want to make sure that you're double checking them, just to make sure that there isn't a human error on the back end, where if they switched your rate plan, make sure that they're also doing you hourly and net metering. So you just want to communicate that clearly.
When I switched over, they screwed that up. So it took several phone calls to get that straightened out.
Okay.
And I usually recommend that people, even once you have your solar, look at your bill. Most of us are just looking at the amount that we owe, but once you become a solar owner, you're going to actually really be curious about the details on your bill. So you'll look at what your usage is, what you're sending back to the grid. So you make sure that you're just doing an eyeball check to make sure everything makes logical sense.
Yeah. On your bill, Chuck, you'll probably notice that there's a rollover amount of kilowatt hours. When you're overproducing during the sunny months, through this process called net metering, you basically bank up all those kilowatt hours that you fed back onto the grid. So then during the darker months, you can draw down from those. So
Correct.
yeah, so that way, even though, come January, when I'm not producing very much electricity, I'm still not going to have much, if any, of an electric bill. All right.
So we've got a lot of folks. Don't be shy about raising your hand and asking some questions. The nice thing is that it's a great opportunity to really fill in those gaps that like Jay, were there anything that you wish you had known when you started this process to once you got done, questions you wished you had asked?
Yeah, well, I think for my personal situation, it was kind of an inefficient way of going about getting solar, in that I had a system, got a car, and had another separate system installed. It's just cost effectively would have been a lot better to do it all at once, but until you have that car, it doesn't really, you can't really, ComEd won't let you build a system that is like going to cover double your energy needs. They'll go up to like 110% or something like that. Is that right, Lisa? Yeah, you're on mute.
They'll go up to 110% of your most recent 12 months. They don't look at your average. They don't look at, they want to see your most recent 12 months. So we're lucky in a sense. The only good thing about having a hot summer is that most people's usage is up right now over a year ago this time. So definitely taking a peek at that makes a lot of sense, so that you are at that 110%. And we often find that people, they use a little bit more electricity after they install their solar. They might, turn that air conditioner down a degree or two because they know that they're producing clean power on their own roof. They might nag the kids just a little bit less often about appliances and their devices and how much power they're using. So oftentimes people do use that little bit of a wiggle room. One thing that's interesting, and I don't know if you experienced this, Jay, for people who, maybe their house isn't quite as energy efficient as maybe, I think we all have, the project list that we would like to do. Because we're putting an umbrella on top of your attic might be a little bit cooler. And so some people have noticed that they use a little less air conditioning in the summer because those upper bedrooms are perhaps maybe a little bit cooler than they normally would have been. Because it's just like, if you stand under a tree on a hot summer day, the solar panels are gonna take over for that.
Yeah, and that kind of speaks to another thing. Before you really even go ahead with solar, you want to kind of look at getting your house as efficient as possible, because you know, it's the kilowatt hour that you don't use is the cheapest. So if you can look at simple things like insulation, changing out light bulbs, if you have old
Caulking windows.
caulking windows. Yeah, there's so many basic things, and you know, ComEd will actually come out and do a free home energy audit for you. It's something that we're always looking at, is how to get things in our house more efficient. We just recently bought a smart thermostat. So there are all kinds of things that you can do to lower your energy use before you really go ahead and look at putting solar on the roof.
We do have a question in the chat. It says, what capacity does an average home need in solar capacity plus charging an electric car?
Yeah, well, the best way to gauge that is to look at your previous electric bills. So you can go online or look at your paper bill and see how much electricity you've used over the past year. And then regarding the electric cars, you know, figure out how many miles you drive in an average year. And my car gets about 4.5 miles per kilowatt hour. And, you know, figure 10,000 miles a year, you can find out how many kilowatt hours that your car would take, add that to your household electricity use. And then when you have the solar installers come out to give you a bid, they're going to want to know how much electricity you use so they can design a system to meet your needs. So yeah, depending on the size of your house, how much you drive, that's all going to be very variable, but easily figured out. And then they have a follow-up question. Why do we need ComEd in the mix to go solar? Well, you know, even though I get my electricity predominantly from the panels on my roof, I'm still connected to the grid. And I want to stay connected to the grid because it's not always sunny. And, you know, I suppose people could buy big battery systems and that sort of thing, but it's really not necessary. It's just way easier to stay connected to the grid. And, you know, ComEd needs to know because they maintain the grid. And they are the ones who are involved with the net metering, so you can continue to you know, reap the rewards of the energy you generate over the summer during the winter months. So they're actually pretty easy to work with from a homeowner's perspective. In Illinois, the net metering rules are a lot better than they are in other states, which actually are somewhat discouraging to home solar. So yeah, they run the power lines and they give you the power when the lights are off. So they're important to have on board.
If I can, I'll just add another thing, and that is that, you know, without batteries, when the grid goes down, your solar goes down. So if you, you know, so if you did, you know, so when that derecho came through, and I think over a couple 100,000 people lost power during that derecho for several days, they would have been out of, you know, even though they had solar, they would have been out of power as well. You know, so being off grid is really challenging. It's really mostly going to happen in pretty remote areas, not necessarily in a densely populated area where we've got modern conveniences and things like that. So it looks like we've got a new question from Rick. Mr. Edison, I see that you were off mute. Would you like to ask a question? I see you.
Yeah. Hey, Jay.
Oh,
Jay
hey.
And I are,
we're neighbors. How's
neighbors.
it going? You can come over for the tour. We'll have you in person, John.
Yeah. No, I will do that, Jay. I will do that. I did have one more question, which is today we have a backup generator that is gas powered, right? It's been connected to the house. You know, but we've had power outages a few times. The thing just kicks on, runs, and you know, there's some risk mitigation, right? Because that is gas, it's always connected, it runs, etc. So when you go solar, can that still remain in case there is an outage that happens, and can that be wired so that that is still available as a backup option?
Correct me if I'm wrong, Lisa, but yeah, it shouldn't be a problem. The reason why the solar goes down when the grid goes down is because the inverter, which kind of connects the solar panels to the household electricity, they're programmed to shut off if the grid power goes down, and that's a safety feature. Because if power lines are down and linemen are out working to repair the lines, they're working with the understanding that there's no power there. And if my house is feeding energy out onto the grid at that time, that's not a safe situation. But I think your gas backup generator, that's going to be just connected to the house and not working to feed energy back out onto the grid.
Right. And if for some reason there's a outage on the solar side or on the grid, whatever, then the backup can kick in as it does today. It can be wired that way. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
your solar installer will should know how to properly
How to do
wire
that.
the generator and the solar inverter so that they don't fight each other. Because we want to make sure that the generator is not feeding the solar, and we also want to make sure the solar is not suddenly back feeding towards the generator. So they just need to be isolated.
All right. Okay. So, thank you.
No, thanks. It's good to have a live question. Ricky Hanna says, can you put more than 110% if you tell ComEd that you're going to buy an electric car within a year so that you don't have to buy two systems and spend that extra money?
Yeah, I don't know. Lisa, do you know?
Yeah, I can tackle that. So that's a tricky one. ComEd does not let you future buy. So with the net metering, the way that it works is if you're at 110%, if you go greater than that, ComEd will allow you to do it, but they don't allow you to participate in the net metering at the full rate. So when you look at your bill, you've got the electricity, the supply, you've got the delivery, which is about 3 cents, 3.5 cents, and then you have taxes and fees, which is about, it gets you a total, maybe about another penny or so per kilowatt hour. So out of, say, roughly 11 cents, you'd get credit back for about 6.5. You only get credit for the electricity, but not on the delivery side. So you might end up losing about $400 or $500. A solar installer should be able to do the math for you. So you'll be saving several $1,000s just in labor costs if you size your system correctly. And let's say you're going to buy that car in a year, you're going to be better off. It's going to cost you a little bit in your net metering, but you'll gain that back by saving on the labor costs and rolling those trucks. Mm-hmm. So it's definitely a tricky line to walk. But they will not future size your system. They just want to look at your most recent 12 months and they don't care about the future. So that it can be a little bit tricky, but it's all just math. At the end of the day, it's just math, and you should be able to find that balance.
Yeah. And, I should say that the net metering balance that you carry resets every year, either in April or October. So if you have a system that's making 130% of your electricity, it's not like you can carry that through to years into the future or like make money beyond what you would have been paying in electricity anyway. That excess electricity you're generating, if you do have a balance at the end of the year, you've just kind of made a donation to the grid at that point, and you've probably displaced some coal in the process, which is a nice thing to do. But just for the sake of efficient installation, it makes sense to do that perhaps.
So if anybody wants to just take themselves off mute the way that Mr. Edison did, we can certainly do that. Jay, we did have a couple of people come after you had completed the slides. Yeah. So since I think we go for a whole hour, is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so since we don't, if we don't have questions, we could just rewind, share your screen, And then that might prompt some questions for those who might have, I didn't see two people come into the waiting room. So maybe we can run through the slides and then go ahead again, either take yourself off mute or just tap your question or type a question and we can tackle them as they come up.
Yeah. All right.
Does that sound okay?
Welcome back. Sounds fine to me. Yeah. Again, my name is Futterman. I'm a volunteer with Illinois Solar Education Association. I've been a solar ambassador with ISEA since 2016 when I installed solar on my house for the first time. And people come to solar for lots of different reasons. My personal story is out of concern for the environment, very, very obvious concerns with global warming and climate change as we think about the wildfires, unprecedented wildfires that have been happening out in the West. And it's also been a record-breaking season for hurricanes in the Atlantic as well. We've reached the 20th named hurricane system earlier this year than ever before. So this is really happening now, and it's something that's, to me, very concerning. And the effects are very, very obvious, and so are the causes. The cause chiefly being the burning of fossil fuels. I live 20 miles away from a coal-fired power plant. The train tracks that carry coal to this plant go past my neighborhood on a regular basis. So it's kind of maddening to me to see the cause and the effect at the same time when we have a solution that's so readily at hand. And solar power is a big part of that. But even if you don't care about climate change, you can get bills like this. And the fact is, solar energy is really the cheapest source of energy that you can get in Illinois at this point. So, solar is all about solutions to me. We know the cost of doing nothing is really astronomical. Investing in clean energy saves money for society, for homeowners. It's a huge generator of economic activity and employment. And we all have a role to play in this transition from dirty to clean energy. And if you're not part of the solution, then you're just contributing to the problem. To go through how solar works, very basically, you have solar panels installed on your roof, a photovoltaic array. The sun shines on those solar panels and creates electricity out of the sunshine. That's created as DC or direct current electricity. That DC energy gets changed to AC or alternating current through something called an inverter, which is either connected to the solar panels or a box outside the house. This whole process happens with basically no moving parts and no maintenance. That AC power from the inverter gets fed into the service panel in your basement, or it then goes into your house and you use the electricity just as you always have. There's no interruption in the electricity if the sun is not shining. You really don't experience the use of electricity any differently. If you're making excess electricity, that goes out through your electric meter and gets fed out onto the grid. The electric meter will keep track of how much electricity you're feeding out, and as well as how much electricity is coming in from the grid on those dark days or dark nights when you're not producing your own. And it kind of keeps a tally of that through a process called net metering. The installation process is really simple. You'll have a crew come out, they attach a racking system to the roof. The panels kind of go up and click into place. It takes a day or two for the system to go on board. My first system is here. It's on the east side of our roof. Southern exposure probably is a little bit better, but east or west works just fine, depending on your roof orientation. So I had 16 panels installed, a 4.2 kW system. This was designed to cover all of my electricity use throughout the whole year. And then I bought an electric car about a year later and started using electricity again. So in 2018, I installed another system with more efficient solar cells because I had a smaller footprint of space on which to put them. But with my two systems together now, I am generating all the electricity I need to run my house, and I'm driving on sunshine, no fossil fuels for me. And this is what the house looks like from the outside. You kind of have to stand across the street and crane your neck to see. So by doing the tour virtually, you're not missing out on too much. A quick plug for Illinois Solar Education Association. Every year we do a raffle. We're raffling off a 2020 Tesla Model X. Amazing car. So raffle tickets a lot cheaper than buying one. So you can look into that online at illinoissolar.org. And great resource for all questions related to solar. You can find installers there and submit questions, learn a lot, and of course, don't forget to vote. So that's the quick version of the presentation for those who joined us a little late. So again, this is intended to just be real casual. We have a good handful of people who are here. So if you have questions, come off mute, ask them, or pop them into the chat box, and happy to talk some more. You're on mute, Lisa.
I thought maybe I'll share my screen real quick just to show if somebody was interested in some of the online tools that are available. If you were curious, if you're looking to go solar, one of the first things to do is to pull out your electric bill and add up your usage to have an idea of how much you're using. Another thing that I like to send people to, let me just share my screen. Is most of us have no idea how much sunshine actually hits our roof. And so this is a really good way to just take a look to see if solar is even a good fit for you. So this is just putting in an address here. I don't know why it's not working. Sure, show me wrong. That's not true because I know this house has done it before. Let me think of another address here. Right. So this is my neighborhood actually, and you can just by typing your address in, you can get a good look of how much sunshine is in your neighborhood. So the brighter the yellow, the more availability of sunshine. The darker the purple, the less available. So you can see the impact of shade. In this case, this is probably a steeply pitched roof that's facing north, and so not as ideal of a location. If we were to look at some bungalows, it's a lower pitch. And so you can see here's a neighborhood with a bunch of bungalows, and even those north side roofs don't look quite as dark purple. So the lower the tilt angle, the more likely your house is, the more, brightly yellow. So, less trees, things like that. So various neighborhoods, have different obstacles in them. But so this is Google Project Sunroof, and it's just a good way of kind of starting. So you want to look at your electric bill, how many kilowatt hours are you using, and then you want to look at your roof. You don't necessarily need to become a solar expert, but it just gives you an opportunity to kind of, just before you talk to somebody, just look at shade, and things like that. So yeah. Just thought I'd share that real quick.
Yeah, and I wouldn't place too much emphasis on the numbers you get in terms of bill savings and cost that you get from sunroof. That doesn't take into account a lot of factors. So yeah, it's a good starting point.
I just look at the color, the pretty colors. I don't necessarily dive in much deeper because they don't necessarily have our incentives correct. They don't know. There's a lot that's kind of generic across the country and not specific to our region. But it is a good way to kind of start.
About 61% of your electricity.
Jay, what about the coverage during winter? You know, being in the Chicago area, the number of not so sunny days that we get, etc.
Right. So yeah, you know, whenever you get a solar system, you'll get an app that comes with it where you can kind of monitor your daily, weekly, and monthly production. And certainly, you know, the winter months, we produce a whole lot less. My house roof is not very steeply pitched, so it does tend to hold on to snow a little bit more than some other houses do. I know talking to some people, the solar panels being black, they tend to maybe absorb a little bit more heat and light and can slough the snow off pretty well. But this is all kind of taken into consideration when sizing the system. Your installer will know based on, you know, the orientation and pitch of the roof and where in the world your house lays, how much snow, how much average sun exposure you're going to get. And through the net metering, it doesn't really matter if there's a day when you're not making any electricity, because you're still getting it fed to you from the grid. So yeah, I mean, that's a factor, but you know, in the Midwest here, we actually get a great amount of sun. You might think, well, yeah, Arizona, California, those are a lot better. But for many years, Germany was actually the world's leader in installed solar. And if you look on the globe, Germany is like similar in latitude to like Alaska. It's really far north. Whereas Chicago is more similar in latitude to Spain, which we think of as a really tropical sunny place. So we get great sun exposure here. The amount is enough for solar to work really well.
Great, thank you, Jay.
Uh-huh.
Does anybody else have any specific questions, perhaps about your house, the attachment strategy? Jay had talked a little bit before. We've got a couple of new people in the room. And Jay had spoken a bit about his experience and how long it took, and you know what the installers worked on.
Could I ask one more question?
Yeah.
Buy versus lease. Any recommendations?
Sure. So I bought our system outright. There are companies that will offer leasing options. You know, solar systems are not cheap. They certainly pay for themselves and then some in the long run. But you know, a system can cost $10,000 to $20,000 before any of the incentives come into play up front. So for people who that's an obstacle, there are companies that do offer leases. And the way the leases generally work is the solar company will put the installation on the roof at no cost to you, but you enter into an agreement to buy electricity from them. So you're essentially buying the electricity that's being produced on your roof. And they'll sell it to you at a price that's less than what you would be paying should you buy it from ComEd. There's a few things to look out for in those leasing contracts. You're going to come out financially in general better if you own it yourself. But if you lease it, you'll still save money versus purchasing the electricity from the utility. And plus, again, you're putting more renewable energy onto the grid. So I think it's a good option. You know, you just kind of want to look long term at what your ultimate savings are going to be. A lot of these leasing contracts have what's called an escalator, where the amount that you're paying goes up year by year. So you just have to look carefully at that and look at those terms to make sure long term it's going to be what you expect it to be. But you know, the great thing is it takes that big sort of initial investment, which is a hurdle for a lot of people. It takes it off the table. But you know, there's other ways of kind of that initial payment. You know, there's home equity lines of credit. There's green loans that you can get that can help with that. So different ways to get that purchase price covered.
Perfect. Thank you.
Jay, this is Sue Raymore, and I have a question.
Yeah, thanks, Sue.
I'm wondering if someone can help me. I picked Highland Park because you live fairly close to where I live. I'm very close to Lake Michigan. Is there an impact with cloud cover? Oftentimes, if I go 5 miles west, it's 10 degrees warmer and sunnier than where I live. So I'm concerned that the maps are going to overestimate how much sun I'm going to get, and I'm going to buy a system that I won't be able to get enough electricity from.
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm not sure if the Google sunroof takes that into consideration or not. I'm seeing a no from Lisa. Yeah, I don't know. I think that may be an issue. I don't know if there's a good workaround that.
Yeah. Do you mind if I hop in?
Please do.
Okay, sorry, Jay. So it could be a little off. So essentially, most of the forecasting tools launch from the PV Watts platform. PV Watts is run by the National Renewable Energy Lab. It looks at latitude. It takes 30 years of historic weather data from the closest airport. So in most cases, in the Chicagoland area, it's going to mostly be looking at O'Hare. Sometimes when I am further north in like Antioch, it might be looking at the Waukegan Airport, or when I'm further south towards LaGrange, it might even be looking at Midway. And it does take 30 years of historic weather data into consideration. So it is seasonal, but it's not as specifically geographic as your system. But those differences might only, vary by, a couple percentages here and there. I know homes that are a little closer to the lake, they might have more lake effect snow, but they also might have a little bit more wind. So whatever you typically see in terms of snow accumulation on your roof, you're going to probably be rather similar. As far as temperature, it prefers cold. So all electronics, like whether it's your computer, your phone, or your solar panels, they prefer to be cold. So in the summertime, we actually do a little bit better than some of our hotter neighbors to the south. So it's nice to have those cooler breezes, things like that. So you might see a little bit of discrepancy. But overall, you should be relatively close because it is looking at averages across the geographic area.
So
Yeah.
I did get a quote, and they're telling me that the quote that I'm still learning to read the quote, but they said something about a 20% efficiency of the panels. Would that be because of the angle of the roof, the pitch, the weather?
So that is typically the components themselves. I'm sorry, Jay.
Yeah. I was going to say that's typically the component, the electronics themselves. So, solar panels, they have a certain efficiency of converting the photons of light from the sun into moving electrons. And they've gotten better and better over time. And 20%, that seems to be pretty typical. Lisa, you know far more than I do about this.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, all those things about, the orientation, the pitch of the roof, those all factor in as to how efficient that particular panel will be at your particular house. And I just want to echo again what Lisa was saying about cooler weather. Yeah, there's really a dramatic difference in temperature being near the lake versus inland 10, 20 miles. And the cooler temperatures really allow those panels to work more efficiently. So, it may be whatever, increased clouds you have may be offset by cooler temperatures in the summertime.
Okay, thanks.
Great question though, Sue, thanks. I just put a link to PV Watts, which is that National Renewable Energy Lab. You put in the tilts, you put in your zip code, and it's kind of a cool place to look. It doesn't take site-specific things like trees or other things that might be out, in your way. So a solar installer is going to give you, probably a more accurate estimation, but it does, take a few things into consideration. You can play with the settings, like if you've got a lower pitched roof and you're not going to shed snow, then you can increase the amount, it's called degradation, the amount that your system's losing. So you can play with it quite a bit to tweak and fine tune things, but a solar installer will be able to help you with that in general.
And I could speak to sort of my process with going and getting a solar installer and all that. So like I'd mentioned earlier, the first thing I did when I looked into this when we bought our house in 2013, prices were high. The state of Illinois didn't really have very clear-cut incentives in place, and things were expensive. So I spent a few years just doing efficiency upgrades around the house, little things here and there. Then when I looked at things again in 2018, we had great federal incentives, which we still do. The federal government gives a tax credit for installing solar. So basically, whatever your total cost is for the system, labor, permits, parts, everything, you get 26% of that cost back on your income taxes. That's a credit, not like a deduction. It's an actual credit, and that's actually stepping down next year. So there's an incentive right now to really get solar going, because next year you won't get as much money back. So that was in play. The state has a program where it's called Renewable Energy Credits, where basically they look at how much energy your system is going to generate over the coming years, and they give you a check for that. So with the state and the federal incentives in place, that really drops the cost of installing solar tremendously by about 60% or so, depending on the house. So we had our house efficient. I got a good understanding of what these incentives were all about, and also about net metering. And then I had 3 different companies come out to take a look at the house, and they, all gave me their own take on, these would be the best panels for you. This is how much it would cost. And I wound up going with one of them, and had a great experience. It's a company I found on Illinois Solar Energy Association's website, and had them come back to do the electric car charger for me, and then had them come back for the second round of solar panels. So all in all, a pretty smooth process. The company I went with took care of really all the paperwork for getting my refund, my state credit, and setting up everything with ComEd and all the permitting and all that. So it was really an easy and seamless process.
Any other questions? Let's see. The 2 most used models for... Yeah, so solar installers have a few tools. There's a comment in the group. But solar installers have a few tools that they use, to help figure out the how much production you're going to have. And I will say, that it is always a good idea, Sue. You mentioned that you've already got a proposal. Definitely, although I'm in the industry, I always recommend that people get several, talk to people. Just like, whether you're hiring an electrician or you're doing a bathroom remodel, talk to a few people, get a feel for their knowledge, their experience, how long have they been in the industry, what types of projects are they doing, and then work with the ones like you would if you were picking a roofer or any other project, making sure that you talk to a few folks and find the one that you feel is the best fit. And feel free to ask them questions about those differences, so they're able to fine tune things and tweak things and work directly with customers. So make sure that you're asking all the questions until you have all the answers that you need to feel confident moving forward. All right, well, I think that another group might have this line at 1:30. So I want to thank you, Jay, on behalf of I should have changed it says Climate Reality Chicago. I want to thank you, Jay, for being a Solar ambassador, for always working so hard on behalf of the association. I am with the board of directors, Illinois Solar Education Association. Please consider supporting the organization through either joining or purchasing a raffle ticket at our website, illinoissolar.org. And I thank everybody for coming today and taking time out of your Saturday to be part of the solar tour this year.
Yeah, thank you all. John, you should stop by.
Will do, Jay.
All right.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks for the great
Thanks.
questions.
All right. Take care.
All right. Thanks, everybody.